I am so glad you all are here today. This is what democracy looks like in movies, right? It's gorgeous, it's engaged, it's informed. You know, I know there are a lot of things you could be doing on a beautiful afternoon like this, but you came here. And you came here because you understand. This is a moment of great peril for our country, a moment of great danger. Yeah. And what happens in 2020 won't just determine the direction of our country for the next 4 years or the next 8 years. This is going to be the direction of our country for generations to come. And a big part of the decision made in 2020 is going to start right here in New Hampshire. So thank you for having me. While we're soaking in the beautiful view, I tell you a little bit about myself, about how I got into this fight, and then we take some questions, and then if anybody wants to, we'll stay and do selfies for as long as you want. That's the fun part. Yeah, that's the fun part. So, I was born and raised in Oklahoma. We got any Okies? None. Okay. One. Okay. There's not that many of us. But I was born and raised out in Oklahoma. I am the baby in my family. I have 3 much older brothers. I am what used to be referred to as a late in life baby. My mother always just called me the surprise. I have 3 older brothers, like I said, and all 3 of my brothers went off and joined the military. So my oldest brother, Don Reed, he was career military. He was in combat in Vietnam off and on for about 5.5 years. We were very lucky to get him back home. My brother John was stationed overseas for about a year, a little over a year. My brother David trained as a combat medic. And because of that, with David, we have a rule in our family, and that is never choke in front of David. To this day, he carries a sharpened pocket knife and is convinced he could do an emergency tracheotomy. It makes for some very exciting moments at Thanksgiving. Somebody goes, and we all just back out of the room. No, David, we're all fine. We're all fine. I'm close to my brothers. I love my 3 brothers. I talk to them all the time and get back to Oklahoma whenever I can. When we were growing up, our daddy had a lot of different jobs. He sold paint, he sold carpet, he sold fencing, he sold housewares. And by the time I was in middle school, the 3 boys, and by the way, to this day, they are still referred to as the 3 boys. The boys were all gone. They'd all left home. And it was just my mama and my daddy and me. And my daddy had a massive heart attack. And for a long time, we thought he was going to die. But he didn't. He pulled through, but he couldn't work. And so I still remember the day we lost our family station wagon. I remember how my mother used to tuck me in at night, and I always knew what was coming next. She'd kiss me goodnight, she'd close the door, she'd stand on the other side of the door, and she'd start to cry. I remember overhearing my parents and learning words like mortgage and foreclosure. And then one day, I walked into my folks' bedroom, and laid out on the bed was the dress. Now, some of you here will know the dress. I'm getting a few nods. It's the one that only comes out for weddings, funerals, and graduations. And there's the dress laid out, and there's my mother. She's in her slip and her stocking feet, and she's pacing, and she's crying. And she's saying, "We will not lose this house. We will not lose this house. We will not lose this house." She was 50 years old. She had never worked outside the home, and she was terrified. And finally, she looked up and she saw me standing in the doorway. I'm just a kid. And she looks at me, and she looks at that dress, and she looks back at me, and she wipes her face, pulls that dress on, puts on her high heels, and walks to the Sears and gets a full-time minimum wage job answering phones. Now that minimum wage job saved our home, and more importantly, it saved our family. And yeah. For many, many years, I thought that is the story my mama taught me, the lessons I learned. And that is, no matter how scared you are, no matter how hard it looks, when it gets down to it, you reach down deep, you find what you have to find, you pull it up, and you take care of the people you love. Yep. It was years later that I came to understand that wasn't just the lesson my mama taught me. That's what happens all across this country every day for millions of people. No matter how hard it is, no matter how scared they are, that they reach down deep, they find what they have to find, they pull it up, and they take care of the people they love. That's what Americans do every day. But here was the part I didn't understand until years and years later. That same story is a story about government. Because when I was a girl, a full-time minimum wage job in America would support a family of 3. It would cover a mortgage, utilities, and put food on the table. Today, a full-time minimum wage job in America will not keep a mama and a baby out of poverty. That is wrong, and that is why I am in this fight. That difference is not some kind of accident. It didn't happen because of gravity. It happened because of who government works for. When I was a girl, the question in Washington about the minimum wage was, what does it take a family of 3 to survive? What does it take a family of 3 to get a toehold in America's middle class, a chance to build something solid so they can go forward and build a real life? Today, the question asked in Washington is where to set the minimum wage to maximize the profits for giant multinational corporations. Well, I don't want a government that works for giant multinational corporations. I want one that works for our families. So, my 3 brothers, they all went off to the military. Me, I had a different path. I have known what I wanted to do since 2nd grade. You may laugh. You didn't decide till 3rd grade, 4th grade. Not me, man. I have known since 2nd grade. I wanted to be a public school teacher. Can we hear it for America's? Early. I used to line my dollies up and teach school. I had a reputation for being tough but fair. I was good. I loved it. I loved it. And I never wavered from what I wanted to do. But by the time I graduated from high school, my family didn't have the money to pay for a college application, much less to send me off to 4 years at a university. So, like a lot of Americans, I have a story that kind of has a bunch of twists and turns in it. And here's how mine goes. I got a scholarship to college, yay. And then at 19, I fell in love, dropped out, got married, took a minimum wage job. It was my choice, and it was going to be a good life, but it wasn't a dream. I thought I'd given up on ever being able to teach school. And then I found it. I found a commuter college 45 minutes away that cost $50 a semester. And for a price I could pay for on a part-time waitressing job, I finished my 4-year diploma. I became a special needs teacher. I have lived my dream job. Now, do I have any special needs teachers here? Oh, good. I've got some. Got some here. Fabulous. Back me up on this. Teaching special needs is not a job. It's a calling. And I loved it. I truly loved it. I still can remember the faces. I had little ones. Still remember their faces. And I probably would still be doing that work today, only my story has some more twists and turns. And here's how the next twist goes. By the end of my first year in teaching, I was visibly pregnant. And the principal did what principals did in those days. Wished me luck and hired someone else for the job. Okay, so I'm at home. I've got a baby now, no chance to get a job. What am I going to do? And the answer is, I'll go to law school. Well, you can't think of anything else. No, I didn't say that. So there I was, found a public law school. We'd moved again by now. $450 a semester. Baby on hip. I did 3 years in law school. Graduated from law school visibly pregnant. You will detect a pattern to this story. Graduated from law school visibly pregnant. Took the bar. Passed the bar. Practiced law for 45 minutes. And then went back to my first love, teaching. I traded little people for tall ones and spent most of my adult life teaching in law school. Now, maybe like people who grow up worried about money and in families worried about money, I taught all of the money courses. If it was about money in law school, you better believe I taught it. So I taught contract law and commercial law and Article 9 and Article 2 and 3 of the Uniform Commercial Code. I taught negotiable instruments. I taught debtor-creditor law and bankruptcy law and law and economics. But there was always one central question that I worked on. And that is, what's happening to working families in America? Why is America's middle class being hollowed out? Why is it that people who work every bit as hard as my mother worked 2 generations ago, today find the path so much steeper and rockier? And for people of color, even steeper and even rockier. It's the same as the answer on minimum wage. It's whose side government is on. Think of it this way. We have a government that works fabulously, works terrifically, works wonderfully for giant drug companies. It's just not working for people trying to get a prescription filled. Can I have an amen on that? We have a government that works great for people who want to invest in private prisons and private detention centers. Yeah, just not for the folks whose lives are torn apart by those institutions. We have a government that works wonderfully for giant oil companies that want to drill everywhere, just not for the rest of us who see climate change bearing down upon us. Government that works great for those at the top, works fabulously for those who can hire armies of lobbyists and lawyers, works terrifically for the wealthy and the well-connected, and it's not working so much for everyone else, that is corruption, pure and simple, and we need to call it out for what it is. Corruption, and it touches everything in Washington. The money flows through that place. Yeah, it's about campaign contributions, but so much more. Whatever issue brought you here today, whether it's gun safety or health care or climate change, whatever issue brought you here today, if there is a decision to be made in Washington, it has been influenced by money. It has been shaped by money. It has been rewritten just a little by the folks with money. So here's how I think of this. In fact, let me tell you a quick story around this. Back in the early 1990s, you go back and read about it, America's just beginning, in fact, the whole world is just really beginning to tumble to what's happening on climate change. We don't quite have all the language, some of the science hasn't locked in place, but that's kind of the point where people are starting to get it. All that carbon in the air and what it's going to mean long term, right? So here's the interesting part. In Washington, Democrats and Republicans are working together. It's not a partisan issue. Both parties are working together because nobody wants to be responsible when things start to get really bad, right? So then what happens? Along come the Koch brothers. I see you've heard of the Koch brothers. Along come the Koch brothers, some of the big oil companies, some of the big polluters, and they say, in effect, to each other, you know, if Congress gets serious about this climate thing, wow, that cut into our bottom line. That would really take a bite out of our profits. So they've got an investment decision to make. Where are they going to invest? Now, they could decide, whoa, we're going to stop investing in carbon-based fuel. Our investment going forward is going to be entirely in green. No, they don't do that. They could decide, we're going to invest heavy in cleanup. We're going to invest in the things that take carbon out of the air and out of the water. They don't do that. Instead, their investment decision is they will invest in politicians. They will invest in Washington. They will invest in the decision makers. Oh, and just to twist the knife another quarter turn, you know what one of their biggest investments was at the beginning? They will invest in bought and paid for experts to go to Washington and deny that climate change is real. Now, what's the reason for that? It's not that they don't understand the science or they understand the science. Why do they invest in those bought and paid for experts? Because they build an umbrella under which politicians can hide and say, gee, I don't know, while they continue to take money from the Koch brothers, from the oil industry, from the big polluters. You want to understand the climate crisis in America today? It's 25 years of corruption in Washington, D.C. that has brought us to this place. So what are we going to do about it? This is not a time when we can say one statute over here, 2 regulations over there, you know, a little 10 degrees more over here. This is a moment for big structural change. We've got to change the structure of how it works. And part 1 to big structural change is attack the corruption head on. Just go right after it. Of money in Washington. Now, here's the good news. I have the biggest anti-corruption bill since Watergate. There it is. Here's the bad news. We need the biggest anti-corruption plan since Watergate. Now, you wouldn't be surprised that this thing has lots of pieces to it because money is felt in so many different ways. So let me just give you a sample out of it. Some of the pieces of this bill. Here's one of my favorites. End lobbying as we know it. Here's another. Block the revolving door between Wall Street and Washington. Here's one you might not have thought of. Make the United States Supreme Court follow basic rules of ethics. How about it? You know, I could do these all evening long, so I'll just pick one more. One more. You really want to root out some corruption in this country? Make every single person who wants to run for federal office put their tax returns online. Part one, attack the corruption head on. Because when you push back against the money, when you attack the corruption, when you disrupt it, now we got a chance to make some real changes. Part two, we need some structural change in this economy. We've got an economy right now that just keeps working better and better for the bigger and bigger. Right? The giants who have taken over one field after another. Big ag, big tech, big pharma, big banking, a handful. And what do? They run over their employees, they run over their customers, they run over the communities where they're located. They exercise enormous power in Washington and around the world. So, how do you think about this? Well, part one, we need a president with the courage to enforce the antitrust laws. But we need more when you think about structural change. Here's what we need. We need someone who can constantly push back against it. We need more power in the hands of workers. That means make it easier to join a union and give unions more power when they negotiate. Unions will rebuild America's middle class. So that's one way you change structure in the economy. Here's another. It's time for a wealth tax in America. So let me explain how this one would work. The idea is for anybody who's got more than $50 million in accumulated assets, your first $50 million is free and clear. I see some people saying, oh, good. But your $50 millionth and first dollar, you got to pitch in 2 cents. And 2 cents for every dollar after that. By the way, anybody here own a home? Yeah, you've been paying a wealth tax for a very long time. It's just called a property tax. What I'm saying is different for these guys is that in their property tax, since their biggest asset is not really their real estate, let's include the real estate, the stock portfolio, the diamonds, the Rembrandt, and the yacht. Just let's include all of it, right? Okay. So the idea is that 2 cents on all that value above $50 million. And understand this, the point is not to be cranky. The point is not to say, shame on you. You know, these folks get up and they say, I had a great idea. I worked my rear end off making this happen. Good for you. You know, I worked late at night. Or I inherited wealth. Donald Trump. However it works. But here's the point. You built a great fortune in America. Good for you. But I guarantee you built it at least in part using workers all of us help pay to educate. I guarantee You built it at least in part. Getting your goods to market on roads and bridges, all of us help pay the bill. I guarantee you built it at least in part, protected by police and firefighters, all of us help pay the salaries for. And we are glad to do it. We are Americans. We understand making these investments together expands opportunities. All we're saying is when you make it to the top, not just the top, but the top of the top, not just the top of the top, but the top of the top of the top, the top 1/10 of 1%. Pitch in 2 cents so everybody else gets a chance to make it in this country. 2 cents. And now here's the fun part. What can you do to restructure this economy with 2 cents? And here's where it starts. We can do universal child care for every baby in this country age 0 to 5. We can do universal pre-K for every 3-year-old and 4-year-old in this country. We can raise the wages of every preschool teacher and child care worker to the professional levels they deserve. We can do all of that, plus, this is on the same 2 cents, we can make tuition-free technical school, community college, and public 4-year college for anybody who wants to get an education. Playing field and put $50 billion into our historically black colleges and universities. I'm not through yet. We can do all of that, plus we can cancel student loan debt for 95% of and by the way, one more, because all of those things we do still doesn't spend all of the 2 cents. We can put in $100 billion to end this opioid crisis in America, to raise our mental health standards here in America, to take care of our brothers and sisters and neighbors. We can do all of those things and still have hundreds of billions of dollars left over. I want you to think for just a second. Yes, there's a park for the dogs too. There is, sweetheart. I want you to think for just a second about what kind of an economy produces that. That a 2 cent tax on the top 1/10 of 1% gives us the money to invest in all of our young people and to help those caught in the grip of addiction and mental illness and still have money left over. Okay, that's part 2. So part 1, we got to attack the corruption head on. Part 2, we got to make some structural changes in this economy. Part 3, we need to protect our democracy. Yeah. Constitutional amendment to protect the right of every American citizen to vote and to get that vote counted. I have a plan to protect every vote cast like it's in Fort Knox so that it is not subject to being hacked by the Russians, the North Koreans, or anybody else with a computer. Racial voter suppression law in this country. It's time to end political gerrymandering Citizens United Democracy. So there it is, 3 things. That's all I want, right? Attack the corruption head on, get a couple of structural changes in this economy, and protect our democracy. Now, to some folks, those 3 changes might sound like 3 unrelated ideas. Good ideas, but not related. For me, they're all about opportunity. And they're all about who government works for, who government creates those opportunities for. You know, that's what pulls me into this, opportunity. Opportunity for every one of our kids to get a first-rate education in this country. Yeah. Opportunity for every kid to be able to get a good job. Opportunity for every one of them. If you want to, try to start your own business. Opportunity to buy a home. Opportunity to marry the person you love and build the family you want. A special needs teacher. Opportunity may just be the chance to live independently, but opportunity for every one of our kids. The reason that pulls me in, somebody who never in a million years thought I would run for any political office, much less President of the United States. I'll tell you why. My daddy, he ended up as a janitor, but it was his baby daughter who got the opportunity. The opportunity to become a public school teacher, the opportunity to become a college professor, the opportunity to become a United States Senator, and the opportunity to become a candidate for President of the United States of America. Fight hard. Let's win this. Explain what you're doing here, Martha.
Okay, so when you came in, you were given a ticket if you wanted to ask a question. So I'm going to pull out 3 tickets. I'm going to read all 3 of them. So you do need to listen. And then there are 2 microphones somewhere out there.
There's one.
Right back there.
And there's one.
And there's one over there. So when I call out your number, please make your way to one of those microphones.
Yep,
okay?
Persist, and then make your way.
Okay, here we go. 0524478.
4478. Do we have a winner? All right! Okay, we got one. Okay, hold on, go around the mics.
0524359.
359. We got a winner?
Have somebody? 359?
Read it again, Martha.
Okay. 524359. It's a little pink ticket.
524359. Do we have a winner? Could be a stuffed animal at the other end of this. We got one? Okay, good. Oh, fabulous. Guys standing right near you. Okay, let's get one.
0524442.
4442. Last one.
There we go, right?
We got one? No? Oh, we got one? 4442? Is that you?
Okay, great.
All right. Let's do this. Let's do some Q&A. Thank you, Martha. Okay, who is first? All righty. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for coming, Senator.
Oh, thank you for coming. I'm glad you're here.
I am here. I have your book, and my first question is, would you please sign it? It's for our library in Franconia. I have a signed copy.
You bet. I would be delighted.
I served with Jill Brewer on the select board in Franconia. And this is not rigged. But as Martha mentioned, I love your suggestion for a public option for broadband access.
Yes.
And that is a real concern here in Franconia and obviously the whole North Country.
Right.
That's my mission right now.
Good.
I'm trying so hard. It's not easy. You're not going to build new trunk lines for cable because we know us old people don't deal with cable anymore.
Right.
We're told we got to go on streaming services.
Good. So
that's my
talk
question.
about that? You bet.
Please.
So let me talk about that for just a minute. Tell me your name again. I'm sorry.
Eric.
Eric, good to see you, Eric. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
So here's the deal. For any of you who haven't been following this, let's start actually back in the 1930s. Okay, no, I was telling a teacher. Right? Let's make this answer longer. But here's the deal. In the 1930s in America, about 90% of the people living in cities had access to electricity. They were hooked up. And about 10% of people living in small towns in rural America had access. And the reason's pretty obvious. You start out with a bunch of for-profit guys, and it's a whole lot cheaper to lay down the lines when everybody's close together and there are lots of people. You get a good return on your money right away, right? And that's where it stood. And basically in the 1930s, Franklin Roosevelt, our country said, you know what? You just can't participate in a 20th century economy if you don't have electricity. You're just going to be cut out of everything. One thing and another thing and another thing. So we all pitched in some nickels. That's what taxes are about. To make sure that wall to wall in this country, everybody had access to electricity. Now, here we are in the 21st century. And in the 21st century, let's face it, you can't participate in this economy if you can't get access to high-speed internet. You just can't. It's about education, it's about trying to run a small business, it's every part of it. And so the question is, what are we going to do about it? And I'll tell you exactly what we've done up to now. We have basically subsidized the giant corporations who have produced very little coverage in rural America, in small town areas, in thinly populated areas. So, what I say is, we stop spending our money like that. Our job is not to make Comcast more profitable. Our job is to make sure everybody sitting here has access to high-speed internet. So I got another way of looking at this. Let's take away the subsidies from the giants. Instead, say to localities, towns, local organizations that grow up, you want to put in high-speed internet, we got some money here to help you do that, and we'll create a public option. You can do it, you can run it, you can offer it for next to nothing and make this work for everybody in the country. That's the idea. Yeah, everybody should have a chance to participate, and that's what this one's about. So thank you, Eric. It's a great question. Who have we got next? Who is next? Right here. Oh, yeah.
How can we get...
Tell me your name.
Martha?
Hi, Martha.
Hi. How can we get the Republicans who voted for Trump to show their remorse and vote for you?
That's an interesting way to ask it, Martha. Let me just say, I don't need the remorse, I just want the vote. Partly, I do think that's part of the answer. You know, I talked about my three brothers. One is a Democrat. Ooh. Somebody did the math quick on that. Yeah, but here's the deal. All of us have a core set of things we care about and that we think is fair. So just look at the numbers right now across this country. How many people think that a wealth tax is a good idea? That the rich are getting away with it? Not paying a fair share, by the way, just so you know, the 99% are paying about 7.2% of your total taxes will pay about 7.2% of your total wealth. That's how much you'll pay all in taxes. That top is at about 3.2%. And you know, you want more. We're just going to start with 2 cents because it just sounds so sensible, right? 2 cents, 2 cents. But here's the thing. A lot of hands go up here. A lot of hands go up among Republicans, too. And a lot of hands go up among independents, too. They get that they're being cheated. And we get out there and make that case and say, here's what we're looking for. Everybody, including the bazillionaires, pays a fair share. That's how we start this argument. That's how we start this campaign. And then, it's a good place to start. And then we talk about the things we can do with it. Canceling student loan debt. That has the support not just of Democrats, not just of independents, but of Republicans. It's 43 million Americans, Democrats, independents, and Republicans, who would see their student loan debt canceled. That's a reason to get in the fight, regardless of who you voted for last time. So I think that's another way. We get out there and show them what we're willing to fight for and how it will touch their lives. We talk about what's broken, and we talk about our plans to fix it. We don't have to agree on everything. My 3 brothers and I are not going to agree on everything. Oh, Lord. But there are some core pieces we agree on. Some core economic pieces. Some core notions of who this country should run for. The idea that if you work hard, if you put in 40 hours a week, that ought to be enough to keep you out of poverty. That one job ought to be enough. My brothers are in on that one. They believe we need to protect Social Security. And after a lifetime of hard work, people are entitled to retire with some dignity. They believe in these core pieces. We just want to get out there and show that as Democrats, we know what they are and that we will fight for them. And I believe when we do that, we're going to watch 2 things happen. One, we're going to pull a whole lot more of them in the 2020 election. But 2, once we make those first couple of big changes, once we get that 2-cent wealth tax through, and tens of millions of people across this country suddenly don't have to pay $468 a month on student loans, $695 a month on student loans, $288 a month on student loans. All of a sudden, that's right, all of a sudden, these folks say, government can make a difference for me. Government can make a difference and be on my side. Government can actually become a force for good. And when we do that, we change this whole country. So, all right, who else we got? Okay,
I think we got one right back here.
where? I'm looking. Oh, there we are. Good. Hi, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Jody.
Hi, Jody.
Hi, I'm a special ed teacher from
Yay!
Pennsylvania. 0 to 21.
Oh, wow. You got the whole range. I just had 4-year-olds to 6-year-olds. So.
Yeah, those 2.
Yeah.
I had 3 questions. The first one, how
3 for
many
the price
days?
of 1.
Excuse me?
I said 3 for the price of 1.
They're all education.
Okay, I'm ready.
First one, how many days will you wait to get rid of Betsy DeVos? The second is regarding students and the inequality in education services, depending on where students live.
Yep.
So that's something I'd like you to talk about.
Right.
And the third thing is, what are your plans to protect the collective bargaining rights of union workers?
Okay, all right. Thank you, Jody. This is really good stuff. So let me start with the first part. You know, we need to remember just how much our agencies influence life every day. And why these cabinet officials that until the last couple of years nobody even knew their names truly matter. So let me start with Secretary of Education. Powerfully important in terms of setting priorities and helping allocate money. I made a commitment right now, and that is I will appoint a Secretary of Education who has been a public school teacher. Betsy Ross need not apply. We're done. But it's very important because it's how money gets drained out to for-profit charter schools. I want to shut down for-profit charter schools. Nobody should be taking that money. Public school money belongs in public schools. So this is true on every part of it. We need our money to stay in public schools. We need to make sure that we've got enough of it. And I already have a long history of having supported this. I want to see us put more money in. I think it's critical. But I want you to pay attention for just a minute to what I did on the two ends of the spectrum. That is the 0 to 5, and then we'll talk about college in just a second. 0 to 5, think about the plan, the 2-cent plan. This is money that will come straight from our federal coffers right down to your community. If you got the babies and you've got a program, whether you set it up through your public school, whether you set it up through a private area, whether you want to set it up through a church, a nonprofit, however you want to do it, you meet the qualifications, that money is going to flow directly to helping our children. It's not going to stop at the state and fill other holes in the state budget. It's going to come straight down to the communities where the children are. So that's part of it. Pre-K, 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, every public school will have the money to expand their programs and to raise their salaries to do this. Second part, when I talk about college, and I talk about canceling student loan debt as well as for the generation coming forward, that you can get a 4-year diploma in a public school without paying any tuition, any fees. And also I'm expanding Pell Grants so kids without money have real access to make this happen. It's going to be our public school teachers who are going to be among the biggest beneficiaries. I talk to public school teachers every day who come up to me and say, I'm working 3 jobs. The second job and the third job are just going to pay off my student loans. I cannot make enough money as a public school teacher to pay the student loan debt that I've incurred. We cancel that student loan debt, we relieve a huge burden for our public school teachers. And I should add, for our nurses, for our firefighters, for everyone who's in the public service. But I want to put in one more pitch on this. And that is, because I keep thinking about structure. How you get structure, change in the system. And one way to get change in the system on education is you need people in there consistently fighting for better funding, fighting on behalf of our kids, representing our kids, fighting for new casebooks and textbooks, fighting for better facilities for our kids, fighting for smaller classroom sizes. And that means we need strong teachers' unions. When teachers come together, they don't just fight for themselves, they fight for every one of our kids. We want to strengthen public education in America. A good place to start is strengthening our teachers' unions. And that means a good Secretary of Labor. So I'm in on this one. I'm all the way. So that gave us 3. I'd love to stay and do another 500 questions. But I thought maybe we move to pictures in just a second. I do want to say just a little bit before we go to this, and that is, you'll have an extraordinary opportunity and responsibility in a primary here in New Hampshire. And that is to take a look at candidates up close, see how democracy works. You know, who's telling the truth, who's out there fighting for it. When I made the decision that I was going to run for president, I know exactly what I'd be fighting for. It's what I've been fighting for a big chunk of my life. But it was not only the importance of the decision about what I'd be fighting for, it's about how I would be fighting for it. I decided before I ever got in the presidential race that I was not going behind closed doors with a bunch of millionaires and corporate CEOs. That I was going to do this grassroots. And I was going to do it grassroots for a reason. Because I'm really worried about our democracy. I'm worried about a democracy where the rich and the powerful just keep calling all the shots. They're in the ears of every decision maker out there. We're running out of time on climate, I get it. We're running out of time on guns. We're running out of time on this economy. But boy, we're also running out of time on this democracy. A democracy in which those who've got enough money just keep making sure their issues are front and center. How they want to decide it constantly influences. So I figured in a Democratic primary, this was our chance. We're not in a general, we're not running against Republicans, but in a Democratic primary, this was our chance to build grassroots and to evaluate candidates based on, can you build that grassroots? Did you really invest in the grassroots? Or were you off collecting a bunch of money and you plan to run a bunch of TV ads? And that's how you think democracy works in America. So it means a lot to me to be able to be here with you. I think you all are my 122nd town hall. We're going to be somewhere over 45,000 selfies by the time we get to this. I've been to 25 states and Puerto Rico because I'm not spending time with the bazillionaires. I've gone to a lot of red places. This partly goes back to, was it Martha's question earlier? I'm out there talking to folks in West Virginia and in Utah and in Arizona and in Mississippi, and in lots of places Democrats don't go. Because I believe it is critical that we make our democracy work again. So thank you all for being here. Let me say on this democracy thing, one last thing. People told me, you don't get out and run for office by talking about a lot of hard ideas. You certainly don't talk about taxes, but you don't talk about hard ideas. And I think about, it's just too hard. Elizabeth, give up on all of this. Just get out, say some nice things, tell a couple of jokes, talk about growing up or your parents or something. Smile more, and it'll all work. And I think about, what do you think the naysayers said to the suffragettes? Too hard. Just give up now, right? What do you think the naysayers said to the early union organizers? Too hard, quit now. What did they say to the foot soldiers in the civil rights movement? Too hard, quit now. What did they say just a few years ago to the LGBTQ activists? Too hard, quit now. But nobody quit. Instead, they got organized, they built a grassroots movement, they persisted, and they changed the course of American history. This is our moment in history. This is our time to get organized, to build a grassroots movement, to persist, and to make this the country of our best values. Thank you for being here.